In this video, we will be discussing the kindergarten geometry two-dimensional shape teaks. Students in kindergarten will be working on geometry, two-dimensional shapes, in the beginning of the year for 9 days. They'll be working on teaks K.6a, K.6d, K.6e, and K.6f. We want to start off our instruction by introducing and teaching the students about the 4 shapes that they'll be working on in kindergarten, which are circles, triangles, rectangles, and squares. That's the initial part of the instruction, is to take time to specifically and directly teach these shapes where the students can identify them very easily. The other teaks can all then start to becoming embedded as you introduce more shapes, as you work further throughout that 9-day cycle. We want the students to also be able to describe the attributes of the 2D shapes. When they start to describe the attributes, they can use formal and informal language. Informal language would be describing this rectangle as having 4 points or 4 corners. Students can also use more formal language by telling us that this shape has 4 vertices. And as the students are describing a shape and identifying and saying this is a rectangle, we want to make sure that they're also including how they know. So as they say this is a rectangle, you want to ask them, how do you know that that's a rectangle? And then we can provide them with a sentence stem. I know that is a rectangle because it has blank vertices, and then they can fill in, or it has blank sides, and they can fill that information in with that. Students will also be deciding which attributes describe a shape and which attributes do not describe a shape. That's where these attribute blocks really come in handy, because they provide multiple examples by color of different shapes. They also provide different sizes and different thicknesses of shapes. Color, size, orientation, depending on how we have them turned, are not attributes of a shape. This is a circle and this is a circle. Just because it's yellow or one is bigger or one is smaller does not identify this as a circle. This is a square and this is a square. They're squares because they have 4 sides, they have 4 vertices, and all of their sides are the same length. Students will also be classifying and sorting two-dimensional shapes. We want to make sure as a teacher that we talk to them or we expose them to regular and irregular versions of the shapes. We do not always want to give them these equilateral triangles. We don't always want to give them triangles that show this very lakeshore poster type looking triangle. Squares are regular shapes. They're regular quadrilaterals. All of their sides are the same length. All of their angles are the same measurement. Rectangles are irregular. A rectangle has 2 long sides and 2 short sides. It is not a regular shape. Make sure that you expose your students to triangles that are also irregular shaped triangles. These are just randomly cut off of just colored paper on a cutting board, and allow the students to manipulate them, to turn them, but to come back that they all are triangles regardless of what they look like. The last specific teak that will be covered when you're discussing geometry 2D shapes with the students will be that the students are to create two-dimensional shapes. We don't need to save this to the end. Once they can identify them and they know the attributes, we can start throwing this in and embedding it within our lessons and discussions that we're having. Geo Boards are a really great tool for students creating the shapes. It's just a board with pegs on it, and the students get a rubber band. If you set the expectations and the rules, the kids will rise to the occasion, and they love working with Geo Boards. You could ask the students, use your Geo Board to create a square, and they would just stretch their rubber band to create a square that they make with the rubber band. They will then need to describe the attributes of that shape. Don't just have them create and move on. Make sure that the students are explaining and describing using attributes, using formal and informal language, what these shapes are. You could also show the students the shapes using the Geo board and say, what shape do I have here? They would tell you that it's a square, and then they can in turn come back and tell you why they know that that's a square. Geo boards are a really great tool, and the kids love playing with them. You can also have the students just draw. You can just give them paper to have them draw. You can give them popsicle sticks, and they can create whatever shape that they need to make that you've described. You can use pipe cleaners and have them bend and shape or put them together. Another great tool that you can use are just straws. If you're using straws with the students, I recommend cutting them in various lengths. If not, they'll kind of always end up being these very regular shapes, just like with the popsicle sticks. But if I use straws that have different lengths, then I'm going to be able to make those rectangles. I'm going to be able to make triangles that are not regular. You can use glue to glue them down on paper. Students could use balls of Play-Doh or balls of clay. I've even seen candy like gumdrops with toothpicks, anything that they need in order to create those shapes. A couple other ideas or suggestions that you can use or things to practice. Songs with the students, huge. They love to sing, so if they get those songs in their head when you're talking, they can just randomly sing those songs when you're lining up. It's at the end of the day. There are lots of books out there that students can use that you can read to them. You can put them as a station that they can do some identifying within those different picture books. So there are 4 teaks that will be covered during geometry. Students need to identify, they need to classify and sort, describe using the attributes, and then create 2-dimensional shapes in kindergarten.